What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Plant the Spear Podcast. I'm your host, Jesse, and welcome to the show. I hope you guys are all doing well out there. It's almost game day. We got a Friday night game this week. Hopefully you enjoyed the stress-free Saturday that we had last weekend. Got to watch some absolutely amazing college football games. And, I mean, really, like, this weekend, if that doesn't get you excited about college football, if you can't, like, just love the game because of things like this weekend, you know, I don't know what gets you excited because, one, it was great because we didn't have to worry about our team being upset or anything. Like, if Florida State was going to pick a bye week, this was a great one because you could just see some crazy stuff happening just with everything going on. I mean, Sun Belt teams are going around committing strong-arm robberies all across the country, you know, just taking money to deliver weapons. And so Notre Dame fell to that. Nebraska, you know, looks like Georgia Southern got Scott Frost fired, and Jimbo out here laying eggs against Appalachian State at home. So it's not a good look for Jimbo. Of course, you know, I hope he gets it together for at least 1 week this Saturday when they take on Miami. So I'm still pulling for them in that one. But yeah, I mean, it was a wild weekend of football, and I think we got to see everybody in action again, which helps us further evaluate because, you know, we're only 2 weeks into the season, and a lot of teams, they haven't really either played like they played at FCS games so far or something like that. So we did get to evaluate our competition a little bit more. I think we all kind of watched Louisville as a family on Friday night, got to kind of see what they look like ahead of time after the Syracuse game. So, you know, I mean, again, guys, like we talked about last pod, this schedule just keeps looking more winnable and winnable. Or the games on the schedule anyway look more winnable and winnable. But that also assumes that Florida State is going to come out and play their A game and stay healthy, which they've already had some injuries hit, but, you know, you've been able to kind of keep it rolling, but, you know, this kind of needs to come to a halt here. But if Florida State can stay healthy and bring their A game, I mean, you're starting to feel good about the schedule. You're starting to really like some of the way the thing's set up. I know everybody's still, you know, well, at least rival fan bases still, for some reason, think LSU isn't that good. Like, Miami fans will sit here and tell you that LSU is a trash team, and like, I know they played Southern this weekend and they should have blown them out, but LSU put up 42 points in basically the first quarter. Like, it was 14 and a half minutes left in the second quarter, and they were up 42-0. And honestly, it doesn't really matter who you play. Like, if it's 42-0 in the first quarter, essentially, I mean, that's a freaking whipping. Like, you're not awful. I mean, to be able to beat someone like that. Again, I know it's Southern, and we'll learn a lot about them this weekend when they play Mississippi State. But, you know, that's the funny thing. They like to just automatically point to LSU not being great. And personally, I think LSU probably beats Miami. From what I've seen Miami so far on the field, they don't look impressive. They don't look top 15. And I think if you put them in the Superdome in that game against LSU, I think they probably lose. But, you know, we'll learn a little bit about them against Texas A&M. I think the funniest thing about the Texas A&M game is it actually sets up perfect for us because now when you look at it, if they win, they're not getting any credit, or at least not from me, because I'm going to pull the same thing that they pull against LSU. Well, that team's not any good. They just lost to Appalachian State. So, you know, you just beat a team that lost to a Sun Belt team. And if they lose, oh, man, it's going to be over for them. They might as well just get off social media because, oh, you couldn't even beat Texas A&M who lost to App State. So, like, they better hope they're going to have some crow to eat this weekend, one way or the other. I ain't giving them no credit. But anyway, this isn't the Miami podcast. It's just, man, them guys they never, like, it's just so annoying to watch them on social media just continue to try and devalue that win and against LSU and everything. And I'm not saying LSU is going to be a powerhouse, but I don't think they're going to be awful. I think if you give them Miami's schedule, they probably win 8 games because they don't sit here and play a bunch of high school and JV teams like Miami does half the season. I mean, look, they got Texas A&M this weekend after playing 2 non-Power 5 teams, one being an FCS team, and then you go right back into playing Middle Tennessee State and I think Duke. So, like, I mean, you know, schedule somebody already before you want to run your mouth. So that's all I'm going to say at Miami right now. But this is going to be the Louisville podcast. This is going to be the preview for the Louisville game. So with that being said, like I said, it was just a fun weekend to kind of watch a few things, just kind of see how some of the teams on your schedule play out. Like I said, a lot of these games look more winnable. Clemson, I didn't watch the game because I just can't watch every game, but they actually got outgained offensively against Furman. I mean, they won 35-12, and it didn't look like they scored anything in the fourth quarter, so I don't think it was like all garbage time, but man, you getting outgained by Furman, that doesn't look good. So, we'll see how things play out. Obviously, a lot of this depends on Florida State. This depends on, can they clean up their mistakes? Can they come out and play their A game? Because I felt great after the LSU game because I realized that they were able to control 90% of that game while making a huge amount of mistakes. But you may run into a game where the team is maybe farther along or a little better than LSU, and if you make that many mistakes, you won't come out on top. So they definitely have room to improve. And I know they didn't get ranked this week. I'm really neither here nor there on it. I don't think we should be ranked yet. I think if they beat Louisville on the road, okay, give me a number. Maybe, if not that, if they beat Boston College at home, if they go to 4-0, they're going to have a number. Because I say that because I don't really want them to be ranked yet, because I want them to keep that humbleness, keep that edge and that hunger, maybe feeling disrespected or whatnot. But to be honest, when I look at the top 25 polls coming out, I mean, show me 25 teams outside of Alabama, Georgia, and Ohio State who are better than FSU right now. And I mean, I feel like from what we saw so far, you could put Florida State on a field with just about 20 of the top 25 teams, and they're going to compete and or win against a majority of them. So that's just kind of where I'm at with that. But this game's going to tell us a lot because this is your first true road test. You've had a bye week. You've been able to kind of get some extra game planning in. You've been able to rest up a little bit. And this is a winnable game for Florida State. But this is also a game that you could lose in too. So to me, if they can come out and back up the LSU win with a win at Louisville, Boston College looks very winnable. I mean, again, this podcast is never going to be about me being right or wrong. But I told y'all Boston College was going to suck in the preseason. So, no disrespect to them, but they just can't block. I mean, they just lost their entire offensive line. They can't block anybody. They got Zay Flowers. That's pretty much about it. So, that game looks very winnable. So, if you can get this one, you can get to 4-0, hopefully. And that just builds so much momentum, going forward. Obviously, with Sam Hartman coming back, that game just got a lot tougher. But, they could beat – they might beat Clemson. With the way Clemson secondary looks and the way Sam Hartman, he put up 300 yards and 4 touchdowns first game back, like he never even missed a step. So, not ideal there, but, kudos to him for even getting back on the field. But you feel positive about this team, but you need to see them take the next step. You need to see them clean up some of the things that they did in the LSU game, and you need to see them put on another performance when it's not necessary. I know it's still primetime on a Friday night, but this isn't LSU. This isn't the Superdome. This isn't, 35,000 FSU fans, just rocking the Superdome. So this is where I feel like we're going to learn a lot about this team and how they handle that success and how they are ready to perform the rest of the season. So we'll learn a lot from this game. And because if you come out flat, you could lose this one because I know he hasn't had the greatest season, but Cunningham is still a dynamic guy, and they have still put it on you the last 2 seasons. So with that, we'll just transition, go ahead and get into the Louisville preview. I recorded this yesterday. I know it's coming out a little late. I'm ready for Florida State to play a Saturday game again. This whole offset days and Sundays and Fridays, it's just I'm trying to get under somewhat of a regular schedule, and it's just it's like pick a day already. It's college football Saturday, not Sunday and Friday and all this. So I apologize for coming out a little bit late with the game being on Friday. I actually recorded like an hour and a half yesterday, but I wasn't exactly happy with it. I didn't like the finished product. I just got off work. I was really tired. So the standard is the standard, and I got to bring it for you guys every week, just like we expect the team to bring it. So scrap that, starting over, new episode, and so let's get into it. I'm gonna try and bring the best I can for you guys every episode. So I apologize about it being a little late, but I got to do the best I can here. So just some notes. Basically, what I did is I took some notes on just overall team stuff, then the offense, then the defense, and how I feel like everything matches up. Got some stats for you. Try not to bore you too much with just a bunch of numbers, but I think it played out well the way we did it for LSU. You just looked at kind of what you had on some guys, and and some things played out the way we thought it would. If you listen to the preview, a lot of the stuff went exactly kind of the way that we thought it would go. So that's kind of the method I'm going to follow here. I feel like it worked well. So as far as I'll just go through the team notes that I took. I did go back and watch the Syracuse game, most of it anyway, and obviously I watched the UCF game. So as far as the overall team thing, like a lot of people, a lot of what do you want to call it, media people or podcasters or whoever, they really came out this preseason, and a lot of them had this game scheduled as a loss, like just right off the bat. And I understand why. I get it. They have smoked you the last 2 years, at least in the first half. I know Florida State outgained them in the second half, or held them, actually shut them out in the second half, and then outgained them in the game. And they were coming back, but how much of that was Louisville kind of pulling off the gas because they had a comfortable lead? I had this game scheduled predicted as a win in the preseason. Because I look at Louisville, I look at Florida State, I don't like it being on the road, and I don't like Cunningham, just being able to make some plays on you. I don't like the way the last two matchups have went. But to me, on paper, Florida State is a better team. And so I chose them to win, unlike a lot of people. And again, it's not being right or wrong, but if you guys have listened before, you know the way I call it like I see it. And if I'm not going to go, well, I have Florida State winning 10 games, and I don't think that's a good number. So I got to find a loss somewhere on the schedule. So let's just pick this one. I don't go that way. Like if I think they're going to win the game, I think they're going to win the game. So I think they're going to. I feel better now after watching Louisville and Florida State for 2 games than I did in the preseason. I was probably a little more 50-50 in the preseason than I am now, but. Again, I mean, this is a team that can beat you. They put up 31 points in the first half of the last 2 games. If you do that again, you're probably going to lose. But I mean, that's what makes you nervous about the game. It's your first true road test. How are you going to perform in that? You are going on the road. Louisville's not at 1-1. It's probably not going to be the most hostile environment, but it is their first home game. I believe it is a red out. You've already seen that we're wearing the all white uniforms with the white helmet, which I think looks good. And I think was smart by Norvell, put the uniform out a week early, riding the kind of the LSU, good favor for winning a big game on a primetime stage, and just kind of carrying the momentum over into recruiting the next week. And I think that was smart of him to go ahead and put that out during the bye week when they were about to go out and recruit. So it could be a decent atmosphere, especially being Friday night prime time. So those are the things that make you nervous. But when you watch them, they have struggled so far this year, and that makes you feel a little bit better. I actually saw, so we know they put up 7 points against Syracuse, and they put up 20 points against UCF. I did see an interesting stat yesterday, and credit to whoever put it out. I'm honestly not sure who did it. But Louisville, their win against UCF was their first time under Satterfield winning a football game when they scored less than 21 points. They were previously 0-9 when they scored less than 21 points. So they've only scored 27 in 2 games. So realistically, a lot of people think it's a race to 31, and I can see that. I think the winner will have probably 30 points, and the loser will probably have less than 30 points. I think that's going to be the score range, and I'll give you a little score prediction at the end. But if you can hold them to under 21 points, I mean, historically, you're looking at a 90% chance of winning this game, which makes you feel pretty good. So you're going to need a big game from your defense. If you can hold Louisville under 21 points, that gives you a pretty good chance of winning. So when you look at the Syracuse game, I mean, they really just got I did not see that coming. I did not see 31-7 coming. And to be honest, Syracuse didn't exactly have a great game. They had 18 penalties for 107 yards in that game. They had some key drop passes. Sean Tucker missed a few series. I believe it was in the second quarter. Their offense did stall a little bit while he was out because, I mean, he really just, like, he's their dude. Like, he is their Dalvin Cook, if you want to say. So when he was out, their offense didn't do as good. So who knows? I mean, they had a goal line stand against Louisville. So, you can take some things from that game because Syracuse is tough to beat at home in the Dome. I understand that, but I didn't see 31-7 coming. And the game may have even been worse if they hadn't had so many penalties because That's another thing about Louisville. Talking about team stats, they've been pretty heavily penalized so far. They have 19 on the year. They had 7 in the first game against Syracuse and 12 in the game against UCF. Now, granted, Florida State only has 12 penalties on the year, and they almost have the same amount of yards. But even then, getting the penalties, because Florida State gets a lot of personal fouls. They get a lot of 15-yard penalties. But even the 5 yards, it disrupts the drive. It puts you in, undesirable down and distance situations. So to me, one of the keys to the game, and I'll cover these later, is just trying to play a clean game on the road because Louisville has been a little sloppy. They have a few turnovers so far. They've been pretty heavily penalized. So, like, if you can just play a cleaner game than them and let them make the mistakes, it's going to give you an advantage in this game. Syracuse put up over 200 yards on the ground. So did Central Florida. So their rush defense is not that great. I'm looking for Florida State to kind of have a bounce-back game on the ground this time around. They had obviously a huge game against Duquesne, not so much against LSU, but I think you're going to be able to get some things going in this game. You may even see Jordan run it a few more times because he really hasn't ran it much because he hasn't had to. And I like that because teams still have to respect his ability to run because he is one of the most dynamic running quarterbacks in the league or in the conference or whatever, college football. And so they have to respect the ability, and they still want to make him win with his arm, and that's exactly what he did against LSU. And so really, like, you should be able to get the run game going if Syracuse is a heavy running team, so that's not surprising. But if UCF can put up 200 yards on them, I think Florida State can too, because Syracuse, like I said, Sean Tucker's a dude, and Garrett Schrader, he's a primarily running quarterback. Which, to touch on that, man, like, I don't know where this guy came from. Last year, he had 4 games with under 100 yards passing, 4 games with no passing touchdowns as a quarterback. Statistically, the worst quarterback in the ACC. And he put up 241 yards and 2 touchdowns against this Louisville secondary. So, I mean, now he also put up almost 300 yards against UConn in their second game of the season. I get it's UConn, and they suck. But I mean, he threw for almost 300 yards. Now, I know a lot of these are out of the backfield to Sean Tucker. For instance, in the Louisville game, he had 85 yards and a touchdown out of the backfield receiving. So, I mean, I feel like I don't know if this guy is like the second coming of Andrew Luck or something like that. But if you look at where he was at last year, for him to be able to put up 241 yards and 2 touchdowns on this defense, I think Jordan is obviously, he's probably a better quarterback with better receivers, so he should be able to put up those kind of numbers. Plumlee for UCF, there's a reason he was playing receiver at Ole Miss. There's a reason he was not any longer at the quarterback position, and it showed. And Louisville actually got smart in the second half and forced him to beat him with his arm, and he just couldn't do it. So that is one thing to look at with their pass defense. I think they only had like 132 passing yards or something like that in that game. But, I mean, look at the quality quarterback from Plumlee to Jordan Travis. So, take that with a grain of salt. Continuing down the team stats, obviously Florida State has not been that great on the road, but they have big wins at North Carolina. They went up and beat Boston College on the road. So they have won some road games. And Louisville last year was 4-3 at home. Obviously, they haven't played a home game this year yet. So, I mean, it's not like Clemson, who's like, I don't know, whatever they are, like 15-0 or 7. They won like 17 games at home or something like that. It's not exactly like, a snake pit up there. They're 4-3, so last year, so they do lose at home. But it's obviously your first road game. It's your first road environment. At least New Orleans was neutral site, so that does pose some challenges. Teams will probably do a little better at home, so I expect Louisville to have a little better game. Knowing, of course, it's our game, they'll probably have a perfect game, but, whatever. FPI, the ESPN FPI matchup predictor, gives Florida State a 54.9% chance to win. Initially in the preseason, Louisville was a 52% chance favorite to win this game, so you've seen things sway a little bit towards FSU. I think they opened up like a 1.5 to 2 point favorite. I took them at 2 points. I put a little bit on FSU because I feel like they're the better team and they can win this game by more than 3 points. Now, again, they can lose this game if Cunningham decides to go wild or something like that, and we're going to cover that in just a second. But, again, lots of penalties in the game. Turnover margin, Louisville is 113th in the country. They're minus 1.5 in turnovers. They have, like I said, I think Cunningham has 2 fumbles and 2 interceptions on the year. Still doesn't have a passing touchdown. So, you may get the opportunity to create some turnovers in this game. Florida State is 93rd in the nation in turnover margin at negative -0.5. But Florida State also hasn't had a lot of teams throw on the ball to create some interceptions, and things like that. They've been fortunate on some special teams, which is something we'll cover later. But a lot of that, it all goes into it. So on the Louisville offense, so far this season they faced Syracuse, who has the 26th ranked defense in the country at this point in time. They played Louisville, obviously, who had the 85th ranked offense, and UConn, who was 104th ranked offense in FBS. So I'm not sure Syracuse is going to finish top 25 in defense, but they're a pretty good squad. So that's who Louisville has faced so far as far as defense. Central Florida is 19th in the country. They faced Louisville and one FCS school, I believe it was South Carolina State. So again, those numbers will probably come back to earth eventually. In EPA per play, which is expected points added, they're 104th in the country. Their success rate, which is obviously getting a certain amount of yardage needed per down to be considered a success. As a whole, their offensive success rate is 35.2, which is tied for, or 35.2%, which is tied for 107th. FSU's defensive success rate is currently 43.8%, which is the exact opposite. They hold you from getting those yards necessary, and that's tied for 98. So, I mean, the FSU defense still has some room to improve, but this Louisville offense has struggled so far this season. Their passing success rate is 40.4%, which is 81st in the country. Florida State's defensive passing success rate is 43.9%, which is 90th in the country. And really, that's the other thing. Like, we still have to see what this secondary is made of because they haven't been thrown on a whole lot this year. You obviously feel good about Jamie Robinson and Akeem Dent. They looked good in the LSU game. But, you still need to see some things from your corners. I think Renardo Green's been good, but you've had some question marks elsewhere. And then as far as rushing goes, UL, their rushing success rate is 31%. So it's not been great. 115th in the country there. Their Florida State's defensive rushing success rate has been 43.6%, which is 103rd in the country. So, again, Florida State's defense has some room to improve. But I think they can have a good game against an offense that's just kind of struggled. Like I said, Cunningham, he hasn't even thrown for a touchdown yet this season. On third down, Louisville has converted 9 of 25, which is 36%, which is 80th in the country. Florida State defense on third down is 35th in the country at allowing 28.6%. Fourth down, Louisville's 1 of 5 so far, which is 108th in the country. FSU fourth down defense has not been great. They've given up both attempts against them, but it's only been 2. That's 115th in the country. So far this season, Louisville has punted 7 times. Florida State has punted 3 times. Louisville has 34 first downs on the year, which is 110th in the country. Florida State defense has allowed 36 in 2 games so far, which is 53rd. Passing offense, UL is currently ranked 100th at around 196 yards a game. FSU defense is 16th in the country. They're only allowing an average of 140 yards per game, but I have to couch that with, of course, Duquesne versus LSU. They gave up 209 yards. So they give up about what Louisville's been getting. So, you probably won't see a ton through the air, but Cunningham has a much better arm than Jaden Daniels. So you may see him throw the ball a lot more. I do think it was great that they had that game against LSU to prepare for a running quarterback because on the ground, they're pretty comparable. I think that Cunningham is a little bit more of a strider. If he gets into open space, he just moves quick, and next thing you know, he turns 3 yards into 43 yards. And so you just got to get him to the ground. But at least you got to see it. You got to see it in action against your defense with a rushing quarterback, so you can kind of make some game plans there. But Cunningham does have a much better arm. So he can definitely throw on you. Now, I don't think he has the receivers LSU has, but Florida State made them a non-factor. They weren't even really trying to throw the ball like Louisville will, though. Jaden Daniels will take like one look downfield and take off. Cunningham, he will run around for a few seconds and buy his receiver some time, and he can still take off and hurt you there. So as far as rushing goes, The UL offense, their rushing is 52nd in the country at 181.5 yards per game average. FSU defense is 53rd, allowing 116 rushing yards per game. Versus LSU, they gave up 139 yards. So hopefully they'll be able to shut down some of that rushing attack for Louisville. Total offense, Louisville is 85th, 377.5 yards per game. Tackles for loss allowed, they are 82nd in the country. They've been giving up 6 on average per game, so you can make some stuff happen in the backfield against them. And one thing I will say, like tackles for loss allowed, Florida State, I was surprised when I saw this. They're actually tied for first in the country right now in tackles for loss allowed per game at only 1.5. They are tied with Georgia and Georgia Southern so far, so that's pretty impressive to see. Just again keeping the trajectory going in the right direction. Passing efficiency, Louisville is 104th in the country. Time of possession, which I feel like is an important stat in this game because you obviously want to keep the ball out of Cunningham's hands as much as possible. Time of possession, they're 67th in the country at an average of 29 minutes, 51 seconds. Florida State's actually 14th in the country at 34 minutes and 39 seconds. So they hold the ball a little bit longer than Louisville, but not by much. You might even want to see that increase a little bit because, again, the more you can keep him off the field, the better off you are. So you'd like to see that go up to about 40 minutes or so. But at least they average a little more than Louisville because you want your offense on the field more than theirs. In the red zone, Louisville's not been great. They're 123rd in the country at a 60% scoring rate. Florida State is 84th currently in the country at 81.8%, which is still that's a big difference. I mean, that's a 21, almost 22% difference. Obviously, Florida State came into the season with the longest active red zone streak in the country, because apparently we're not that great at kicking field goals. The streak did come to an end, but they're historically good in the red zone, so I feel good about that. If I just want to see Fitzgerald you ain't got to be out there bombing them from 50-something yards, but we got to be able to have some kind of reliability at kicker. You got to be able to kick the ball inbounds. You got to be able to make some field goals. Their kicker did miss one last game too. I think he's actually has a worse percentage than Fitzgerald, so that could be something to watch too. Quick reads and short passes and quarterback runs is kind of their game on offense. They like to spread you out. They run a lot of spread formations. They do bring it into like the pistol a few times because obviously they're going to give Cunningham a chance to run some RPOs and things like that where he can really be dangerous. But you did see in the Syracuse game, their strongest unit on Syracuse is probably their linebackers. And they were able to kind of limit a lot of what Louisville wanted to do. And I think Florida State has some of the best linebackers in the conference this season. I mean, Tatum Bethune has been a huge boost to this defense. And the guys that were already on the roster are having good seasons as well. So you're hoping that can be a little bit of a neutralizer here for Cunningham. So getting into the position groups, we'll do a quick position group preview of each side of the ball. So the Louisville offensive line came into the season as one of their strongest units, not like anything special, but something that they got a lot of veteran guys and should be kind of a staple for them, something they don't really have to worry about. But on the film so far, they've not been impressive. They're not bad. They're not getting blown off the ball or anything, but they're not really that good either. I think one thing that makes this offensive line look a lot better than what they are, they get bailed out by Cunningham's running ability a lot. And I think one where you see that is when you look at PFF grades, their run blocking grades are not great, but their pass blocking grades are all pretty good. Like almost some of them are really good. And they've given up 25 pressures and 6 sacks so far in 2 games. And when you watch the film, you can obviously tell there's a lot of times where just Cunningham's ability to get out of the pocket to avoid pressure, it's bailing them out. So they're getting a lot of credit for that. And to be fair, they're usually able to give him enough time to make a read or two and then take off. So they're effective enough for what he has. One of the problems in the first 2 games was Satterfield, they really wanted to make Cunningham, more of a pocket passer this year, and they didn't really want him just running wild. And I think a lot of that is because he is their offense. Without Cunningham, that offense is probably dead in the water. I honestly don't even know who their backup is. And Cunningham is extremely dynamic. He put up 4,000 yards last year and almost 40 touchdowns. So they know he's their offense. And to have a successful season, he has to be on the field and he has to be playing. So they tried to make him a little bit of a pocket passer. That's just not his game. He has to have the running ability for defenses to game plan for that to open things up for him. And we saw at the end of the UCF game, they started letting him run it around a little bit, kind of get to the old game plan some. And Satterfield even made comments about that after the game. We had to go back old school a little bit. So you can probably expect to see a lot of that against us on Friday night. Like, hooray! I'm glad you figured that out. Can we go one more game trying to make him a pocket passer without doing that? And so you'll probably see a little bit more of that. But I also think too that Satterfield, like, he built a great program at App State, and I live in the Carolinas, so I've always kind of kept up with them. I really want to go to an App State game. They've just been doing some amazing things. But since he come over to Louisville, he's had a talented quarterback. He's not really won a whole lot with it. So, honestly, I think Louisville is kind of like, Satterfield's not the most liked guy there. I think he stepped on some toes by pulling some scholarships when he first got in. And I understand it, but I think he's also in a position where he's got to win something, or they're going to maybe look for a change. And so I think that he's probably going to let it all hang out. Like, he's not going to necessarily worry about risking Cunningham too much because he's got to win, and he knows that. So I think you'll see a little bit more or running in this game by Cunningham. So up front on the offensive line, just to finish these guys off, you have your left tackle. He's a senior, 6'5", 305. His rushing grade is 59.6, and remember, 60 is average, and so that's below average. His pass blocking grade is 72.2, and this is a trend that you're going to see with this offensive line. So the left guard, he's a redshirt senior. Again, experienced guy, 6'4", 295 pounds. Rushing grade is 60.1, just above average. Pass blocking grade is 64.1. The center, he's a redshirt junior, 6'4", 301 pounds. Run blocking grade is 57, below average. Pass blocking grade 79.5, way above average. Their right guard is a senior, 6'5", 294 pounds. Run blocking grade 51, which is terrible. Pass blocking grade is 79.3, which is awesome. Again, you're seeing the trend. Like, they get bailed out by this guy a lot. The right guard, he's a sophomore, 6'4". The other right guard, they do play too. This guy's had some significant snaps. And the way I do this is I tend to use the starter and then anyone else who's had significant reps. So they do have another guy who got significant reps. He's a sophomore, 6'4", 315 pounds. His rush blocking grade is 68.9, which the less amount of snaps you have, the more impactful the grades are. So he doesn't have the sample size set yet. Now, he just may be better at run blocking, and that's why he's getting some burn. But usually, like, you have to throw out anyone with like less than 20 snaps because their grade's going to be wildly kind of inaccurate. And again, PFF is not the gospel, but it gives you an idea of who's an impact player and who's not. But his pass blocking grade is 67.7. At right tackle, you have a redshirt sophomore, 6'4", 311 pounds. His run blocking grade is 62.2, and his pass blocking is 88.3. The other guy to give some burn at right tackle, he's a sophomore, 6'4", 303 pounds. Run blocking grade is 62.7. Pass blocking grade is 60.9. And when looking at the breakdown of kind of how their run designs go, they do like to run between the guard and tackles a lot, and they do favor the right side of that line a little bit, which is where you see the better run blocking grades. So they do. It's not a lot, but they've had more success on the right side, running to the right side. So they do favor that a little bit. Like I said, 25 pressures allowed by this unit so far, 6 sacks. 24% of the pressures have turned into sacks so far. So the thing is, like, you can get penetration on this line, and they do give that up a lot. I have watched, like, in the film, they do allow a lot of penetration, and it's just Cunningham so hard to get down. And if you can get to the back in the backfield, this game is really, you have to be smart by your defensive ends. You have to be able to get enough pressure to get him off, just standing in the pocket, delivering throws. But you can't over pursue, because if you do, he's going to take off on you, and he's going to be gone, and he's hard to bring down. So you got to get him on the ground if you get into the backfield, or he can hurt you. He scrambled 9 times so far this year on 66 dropbacks, so he has no problem taking off. And just to get into Cunningham now, we'll go ahead and do a preview on him. So he obviously hasn't looked very sharp in the pass game so far. I think a lot of that is coming from the receivers that he lost this offseason. He lost his top 3 targets to the portal, which is something we covered if you listen to the preseason preview that we did. And I thought that was going to affect him greatly, and it has so far. They did get a receiver in the portal, Tyler Hudson, who is their number one target. I believe he was from like Central Arkansas or something like that, put up 1,200 yards. So he's not a bad receiver. You just had questions of how it was going to translate to the Power 5. But Cunningham still has a dynamic running ability, and that is really where you have to be careful because they have put up an offensive clinic against Fuller's defense the last few years. And one thing that we saw on LSU was Fuller had taken on Mike Denbrock, the offensive coordinator from Cincinnati, who was now at LSU, and he held their defense both times, and they won both games. So it made you feel a little confident. This is kind of the opposite of that. He has not really been able to slow down Satterfield's offense yet, and so you want to see that, especially like I said, you don't always have to give something up. But I felt like in the LSU game, they were like, well, Jaden Daniels can't beat us with his arm unless you run prevent. But then we're just going to kind of let him have the underneath stuff taken off on scrambles because they don't feel he's going to win that way. Well, the thing about Cunningham is you cannot let him run wild on you because he's probably a better runner than Jaden Daniels, and he has an arm too. So you can't just let him run around because, he can, like I said, he can turn a 3-yard scramble into a 43-yard touchdown real quick, and that happened against Central Florida. So he is able to buy a lot of time, which does help them out. Like you'll see, he doesn't necessarily always just scramble and take off. Sometimes he'll buy you 4 or 5 seconds for his receivers to get open. So again, like if you get into the backfield, you got to bring the heat and you got to get him on the ground. Statistically, so far this season, he's 30 of 51, 58.8% completion percentage, 353 yards, 6.9 yards per attempt, no touchdowns, 2 interceptions. His adjusted completion percentage is 73.3%, which accounts for like drops, throwaways, and things like that. They do have 3 drops so far, which is almost 10% of the passes. So the receivers have not been overly impressive. I will say that. He has a big-time throw rate of 5.4%. Not great, but not bad, honestly. His turnover-worthy play rate is a little high, though, 5.6%. That's pretty high. That's like double what Jordan Travis is. QBR at 55.6, not great, not overly terrible. He has been pressured a lot this year. So looking at his kept clean stats, he's been kept clean, which is, no pressure, given a clean pocket to throw the ball 62.1% of the time. He's been pressured 42.9% of the time, which is pretty high. Like Jordan Travis was about a 60-40 split last year, and he was one of the most pressured quarterbacks in the ACC. So they're letting some guys get to him. But kept clean, he's a pretty good passer. His PFF grade is 71.8. He's 24-37 for a 64.9% completion percentage, 274 yards, no touchdowns, 1 pick. And his big-time throw rate when kept clean is 7.3%, which that's pretty good. And his turnover-worthy play rate is 2.2%, which is also really good. And he scrambled 4 times when kept clean, so maybe he just didn't have something open downfield. Now, if you can pressure him, which, like I said, he's been pressured about 43% of his dropbacks. He drops down to 6 of 14, which is 42.9% completion percentage, 79 yards, no touchdowns, 1 interception. But what really stands out is under pressure, his big-time throw rate is 0%, and his turnover-worthy play rate is 11.1%, which is through the roof. So, like, if you can get him, running, scrambling, moving, and then trying to throw, you have some opportunities to get some picks, and that's where you've seen some of his struggles. And he scrambled 5 times out of his 9 when under pressure. And the funny thing about Cunningham, and according to the advanced stat service that I use, he's actually been better when you blitz him because of course you're creating an advantage for his receivers then. And when he is blitzed, he has a higher completion percentage, less interceptions, higher yards per attempt, higher big-time throw rate, and lower turnover-worthy play rate when he's blitzed. So if you can get to him, which a lot of the teams did without bringing the house, if you can get to him with the least amount of people possible and let your guys sit back and take away some of those receivers, you have a much better chance of having a good game against him. Of course, you don't want to not bring any pressure and just let him sit back there and pick you apart, but if you can get pressure on him without blitzing, like I said, you can. His receivers are not dominant, so you can lock those guys down, and then you just have to contain him because he's probably going to take off. which Florida State likes to run a lot of man defense. So there are going to be times where you got your back turned and there's going to be some things open. So maybe they'll run a spy or something like that. But honestly, looking at our defensive line versus their offensive line, I don't think there should be a problem getting pressure on him with your front four. I think Fuller will probably bring a little bit of heat early in the game just to kind of get him uncomfortable. But, like I said, looking at the numbers, if you can do it with your front four, I think that's a successful game plan. As far as passing depth goes, he's really effective in short to medium, which is 0 to 19 yards. He's got a 73.9% completion percentage for 152 yards and a 70.2 PFF grade on a short passing. Medium, he's got a 75% completion percentage for 130 yards and a 79.1 completion percentage, PFF grade, which is really good. When you look at your deep passing, that's where things start to fall off the rails a little bit. He's 1 of 8, which is a 12.5% completion percentage for only 37 yards and a 61.3 PFF grade. So if you can just, he's not been effective with the deep ball. So I'm not overly worried about getting burnt. And I think a lot of that has to do with these receivers. They're just not a dominant group, and they don't have a lot of depth either. They have a couple guys who are pretty good. The rest haven't been great. But he's pretty effective at working short to mid-range throws, especially in the center of the field. He's found a lot of success there. Like I said, Louisville, a lot of teams do run zone on him because they don't want him to tear them up on the ground. So you get some chances to get some of the underneath things open. As far as rushing goes, he has 17 attempts for 170 yards, 6.5 yards per attempt. So, again, he's dangerous on the ground. He does have a rushing touchdown this season. He also has 2 fumbles. So, he's responsible for 4 turnovers in 2 games. So, that may be some opportunities there. He has 5 runs of 10-plus yards. So, like I said, once he gets into the open, if you don't get him down, he's gone, and he's going to be hard to catch. So, he had 56 yards on scrambles, 114 on designed runs. So he can hurt you either way, like on a design run or whether he's just kind of making something happen, kind of some backyard football type stuff. So really, again, as I'm going to move on from Cunningham here, the game plan is to figure out how to stop Cunningham because he is their offense. So that's who you have to stop. Moving on to the backs, they seem to get hit at the line of scrimmage a lot. Like I said, their offensive line does allow a fair amount of penetration. They don't make a whole lot of guys miss. I will give him credit, number 7, Tyon Evans, who was a transfer from Tennessee. He runs hard. He's kind of a smaller, stocky guy, so he's kind of like a little bowling ball firing up in there. He does run really hard, and that gives him the ability to break some runs, and he has on film when you watch it. But a lot of times he just runs into somebody and kind of falls down. So they've been okay, but they've not really been special. He averages 4.9 yards a carry. He has 3 runs of 10+, and one other thing you might want to watch is his pass blocking grade is 29.8, which is abysmal. So, I don't think you're really scared of the ground game outside of Cunningham in this one, but that's not to say Tyon Evans can't effectively break a run or 2 on you if you don't get him to the ground, because like I said, he does run hard. And moving on to the wide receivers, this is not a special group. Like I said, they got Tyler Hudson, who has been their most targeted receiver so far. He actually has twice as many targets as any receiver on the team. So he's going to be their go-to guy. He is a bigger receiver at 6'2", 195. He is, like I said, he's a senior transfer. So far this season, he's been targeted 14 times with 11 catches. That's a 78.6% completion percentage, which is good. He has 169 yards on the year. He averages 15.4 yards per catch, which is good. Has not caught a touchdown yet, obviously. He does primarily line up out wide. He's lined up wide 86.1% of the time, and in the slot about 14%. His contested catch rate is 4 of 5, which is 80%. Doesn't have any drops currently, and a PFF grade of 70.2. So he is their guy. He is their, Kelvin Benjamin or whatever you want to say. He is their WR1, their wide receiver 1. He's the guy they're going to go to most often. And Cunningham likes to throw it to him a lot because he's the bigger guy and he can go up and get it. But he doesn't blow you away. So, when you look at the second thing you probably want to take away besides Cunningham, it's going to be this guy. And if you can limit him, you're not too much scared of anybody else. Even their really talented tight end, Marshawn Ford, he's had a rough season so far. He's had some drops. He's just not looked great. So their number 2 receiver that you'll see him go to is Amari Huggins Bruce. He's 5'10", 166 pound sophomore, so he's a smaller guy. He does have an 83.3% catch rate. He's only been targeted 6 times, though. So like I said, you can see where Hudson is their guy. He does have 104 yards on the year, 20.8 yards per catch. So they like to get it to him and let him do some work. So, again, it's a little speedy guy that you got to try and get down. No drops so far, no contested catch rate, PFF grade of 71.3, which is that's pretty good. Give him credit there. But these receivers don't scare you. These are not LSU receivers. But, again, what's worse, having an average group of receivers and a good quarterback who can take advantage of them, or having a really good set of receivers and a quarterback who can't hardly throw the ball to take any advantage of them? And, I mean, to me, I think we've seen that play out both ways, where I think that the LSU receivers were severely limited by Jaden Daniels, and I think we're seeing the effects of Malik Cunningham not having dynamic receivers. So, I just don't – this offense, and that's going to wrap up the offensive side of the preview. Again, like I said, I just don't feel like this is an offense that scares you. They've had some trouble so far. I mean, really, to see Louisville put up 7 points against Syracuse was kind of crazy, and only 20 against Central Florida. Again, guys, I mean, you got to stop Cunningham. That is 99% of their offense. You have to stop him, and then, maybe if you can do some things to take away Tyler Hudson, then I feel really good about stopping this offense. The more you can keep Cunningham off the field by establishing your run game, the better I feel about it. But that's most of it. I think you're going to see him run more in this game than you probably have before the last 2. But, I feel good about what our defense can do against these guys. Obviously, the secondary will probably be tested more in this game than they have in the first 2. So we still need to see some things from them. They still haven't been really tested with a quarterback with a good arm. They did give up a lot of things late in that game that kind of concerns you here. And don't get me wrong, I think Louisville's going to get theirs. They're going to bust some. They're going to be at home. Cunningham could come out and just have a crazy day. Hopefully not. But, yeah, I mean, I feel like you can have success against them, though. And so moving over to the defense, but as far as that goes, if you can hold them, like we said, if you can hold them to 21 points or less, you're doing pretty good, and you got a really good chance of winning. So moving over to the defense, their defensive success rate is 45.3%, which is 109th in the country. Not great. FSU's offensive success rate is 53.7%, which is 8th in the country, which is doing something. Now, again, you have to couch that against Duquesne because they had almost 650 yards of offense in that game. So you do have to take that with a grain of salt. We'll see how that averages out over the course of a season. Louisville passing defense's success rate is 29.2%, which is 12th in the country. So they've done pretty good there, but you also have to remember they were playing a team who had a wide receiver at quarterback. So that might help pad their numbers a little bit too. FSU passing success rate is 52.6%, which is pretty high, which is pretty good for them. I mean, that's great. And that's tied for 20th, which is something that we've seen. Like, you guys know that if you read the preseason magazine, I mean, I dedicated 2 pages solely to making my case of why I feel like Jordan Travis could be a better passer. He's been so limited with the weapons around him recently that we're finally starting to see him blossom as a quarterback when he has actual receivers to throw to, when he has a line in front of him that can give him enough time to make some reads and throw the ball. And, like, we haven't even seen Jordan run the ball a whole lot, which is smart because you want to keep him healthy, and he doesn't have to. He hasn't had to, and it's kept him healthy, which is what you need because we don't want to see a backup quarterback situation. They said they've been running Travis Jay at quarterback for the scout team to prepare for Cunningham, which I do like. But, hey, maybe he turns out to be our new backup quarterback because, you don't want to see that situation. But it's been nice that Jordan hasn't had to run the ball because that's a whole nother aspect of his game that hasn't even really been used yet this year. So I think you'll see him run more in this game. I do. One thing about Louisville's defense, well, let me just finish up these numbers real fast. So their rushing success rate, again, this is going to lead into what I was about to say. Their defensive rushing success rate is 59.7%. That is dead last in the country, 130th. And Florida State's offensive rushing success rate, which again was padded against Duquesne with over 400 yards of rushing, 54.4%, which is 8th in the country. So you have some opportunities to run the ball on Louisville. And that's the other thing is what I was going to get into is they tend to over pursue a lot of things on their defensive line because they're an undersized unit and they really use the speed rush to their advantage. Now, they have some guys who can make some plays, but they don't get a whole lot of push. But a lot of times what you'll see is they run primarily a 3-4 and they blitz a lot. But you see when I watch the film, a lot of these guys just fly up the field and they just get killed with the underneath screens and like a quarterback run because they create natural running lanes from being 8-10 yards up the field, on a pass rush. So I think you are going to see Jordan run the ball a little bit more now, probably in this game. So that's something to kind of watch for because their rushing defense has not been good by Louisville. They are, I think, 117th in the country, and they gave up over 200 yards in their first 2 games. So there's going to be opportunity there between Jordan and the 3 running backs that we have that looked really good in game 1 against Duquesne. They had a quiet game against LSU. Again, they schemed to take the run away and make Jordan beat him with their arm, which he did. I think you're probably going to see the same game plan here. You're going to see him probably load the box up a little bit, bring a lot of pressure. Florida State has been, from what I understand, been working on a lot of blitz pickup this week, which is smart because, like I said, Louisville likes to run a base 3-4, and they like to bring a lot of pressure. So if you can pick those blitzers up, I think Jordan, this will be the best receiver group that Louisville's faced by far. Syracuse is not really known for their receivers, and Central Florida didn't have a quarterback, so it didn't really matter who they had out there. This is going to be the toughest receiver group they're going to see, and I think Jordan can use his passing ability because he is very efficient, and he has had a good year so far. Obviously, we need to see it through a few more games, but he can use that passing ability to open up the run game, and then, if you can run on them, I think, to me, you just run till the cows come home, till they decide to stop it. So on third down, Louisville's defense is tied for 72nd in the country. They allow 37.0% conversions. FSU offense is 9th in the country at 59.3% conversion. They've been great so far, 16 of 27 on third downs. Versus LSU, they were actually better than their average, 11 of 17 for 64.7. So you like the possibility of them being able to sustain some drives. Fourth down defense, Louisville has not allowed any on their 2 attempts, but again, it's only been 2 attempts. Florida State's 1 of 3 on third down. We know with a struggling kicker, Mike Norvell likes to go for it. You'll probably see that. So fourth down may be a little bit of a concern there. First downs, UL defense has allowed 41, which is 72nd in the country. Florida State has had 55 first downs so far this season, which is 24th. Again, you like the ability to probably be able to sustain some drives. Pass yards allowed, UL defense has been pretty good. They're 41st in the country, 186.5 yards per game average allowed. Florida State offense is 67th in passing at 246 yards a game. Versus LSU, they put up 260 yards, actually had a better passing game than they did against Duquesne. I think that's because Jordan came out early. So you like your passing ability there. I mean, they have a little bit better pass defense, but again, they got helped out by that last game with the receiver playing quarterback. I mean, we're not exactly in a situation like Florida, where they got fed some humble pie by Kentucky. I forgot to touch on that. So, like Anthony Richardson had a QBR of 3.8, literally 3.8. I didn't even know QBR went that low. But shout out to him. Like he did have his first passing touchdown of the season. Unfortunately, it was to the other team, but he got a ball into the end zone. So, congrats to him. Hats off to him. Threw his first touchdown on the season. Next time, it'd probably be better if you went for your own team. But enough about Florida. Just saying, you have a better quarterback than they have faced passing wise. So I think you're going to be able to open that up a little bit. Rush defense, obviously, like we just said, UO defense has given up 208 yards a game average at 116th in the country. Florida State's offense is 6th in the country in running. Obviously, the Duquesne game with over 400 yards kind of really padded that stat up. They only had 132 versus LSU. But again, you were effective throwing the ball, and putting up over 100 yards rushing is good. But I'm really hoping for this game for them to hit that 2-bill mark. Get me 200 yards on the ground, and I think you're doing something. Total defense, UL so far they're 88th in the country. They're giving up 394 yards a game. They face the Syracuse offense, which is 46th in the country, and UCF, which is 36. So it's not like they've really faced some lights-out offenses quite yet. And so, when you look at the red zone, UL is tied for 40th in red zone defense. They allow 75%. So Florida State should be able, if they can get the ball down and hopefully make some kicks, they can get some points on this team. The defensive line, going position group again, they don't look impressive to me. One thing, they did lose one of their potentially best defensive linemen for the season in Jermaine Lowell. He was a transfer from Arizona State. He did play some in the Syracuse game. When you saw him, you were like, man, who's that guy? He's freaking huge. He's just a big guy. And then he's out for the season now with an injury. So, I hate to hear that for someone to be out for the season, but that's a hole in their defense now. And so that's something to look forward to. They don't get a lot of push. So they're like we said, they're smaller, they're undersized. I feel like you can push these guys around. They over-pursue a lot of things. And this defense has a lot of missed tackles, just a lot of missed tackles. One stat that I had down here, they had 12 players on their defense who were significant contributors who had over 20% missed tackle percentage. So, that creates some things, especially when you got backs who are good at creating missed tackles. That's definitely an opportunity. So, like I said, Louisville's not the most disciplined team. They're heavily penalized. They miss a lot of tackles. They over-pursue a lot of things. And so and they had some coaching blunders in the last game. I know Satterfield's kind of schooled Adam Fuller the last two games, but I think you have a coaching advantage here. So that's some things to watch. Like we said, they did change up the scheme in the second half of UCF, which really helped their defense. But, they forced Plumlee to pass, and he couldn't do it. And I don't think that's going to be the case with Jordan Travis. Looking at their defensive line, number 9, their starting DM, 6'2", 272-pound sophomore. He's got 5 pressures and 2 sacks on the season, 2 tackles, 4 stops, and a PFF grade of 64.3, so just above average. You have DN number 41, who also plays behind him, gets a significant amount of snaps. 6'3", 267, redshirt sophomore, 2 pressures, 1 sack, 1 tackle, 1 assist, 2 stops, and a PFF grade of 62.1. So you got 2 just above average guys that are kind of undersized. Their nose tackle, man, you can tell they're missing Jermaine Lowell up the middle. So number 99, he's 6'1", 296, 0 pressures, 0 sacks, 4 tackles, 1 assist, 3 stops, and a PFF grade of 51.9, which is well below average. And see, this is right here where you're missing Lowell. So their backup nose tackle is 6'1", 284-pound redshirt freshman. If you can't push around a 284-pound redshirt freshman, I think this offensive line, now that we actually have some size up front, they should be able to shove this guy around if he's in the game. That's number 93. 1 pressure, 1 sack, 1 tackle, 1 stop, PFF grade of 68.4. Now, I know his grade looks better, but like I said before, he has less snaps, which allows you to have a higher grade because, anytime you have a smaller number set, it's going to have a bigger impact. So the more snaps he'll get, that'll probably come down to earth a little bit. And that doesn't mean he can't be a good player. He's undersized. And when you get guys like Demetri Emmanuel and Dylan Gibbons pushing on him, you should be able to move him around a little bit. On the other defensive end side, you have Yaya Diaby, number 6. He is an impact player for them. He's a 6'4", 270-pound senior, and he kind of is all over the field for them. 3 pressures, 1 sack, 4 tackles, 1 assist, 3 stops on the year. But his PFF grade is only 55. That's not great. He's one that you have to watch because he is experienced. He is a good player, but not having the greatest season grade-wise so far. Behind him, they will run another defensive end on that side, number 95, 6'4", 250-pound sophomore, 2 pressures, no sacks, 2 tackles, 1 stop, PFF grade of 49.8. Just pitiful. They'll probably look like Aaron Donald out there this week, I'm sure, just because that's how Florida State's luck works. But, guys, there's some opportunity up front for this offensive line to have a good game. Like I said, these guys are kind of undersized. They haven't performed well so far. And so that's really a matchup that you could take advantage of. Moving back to the linebacker, they do have a hybrid guy, kind of like what Florida State likes to run. He's a outside linebacker. He does line up at D end a lot. Number 22, Yasir Abdullah, 6'1", 240-pound senior. So he fits like a big linebacker build. Out of 128 snaps, he's only been in coverage 12 times. He has 60 pass rush snaps and 58 run defense snaps. So you can tell he's more of their linebacker DN hybrid that likes to come up the field on blitzes and stuff like that. He has 5 pressures, no sacks, 5 tackles, 5 assists, and 3 stops. As far as coverage goes, if he does drop back, so far he's allowed 2 receptions on 2 targets, and but he's not giving up a touchdown, but he's not had any PBUs either. His PFF grade is 68.6, which is pretty good. Rush defense is 69.9, which is good. And his coverage is 62.1. So if you can get him in a coverage situation, you can probably take advantage with that. Like give Cam McDonald on him or something. A little bit of a kind of a speedier, more receiving tight end could make some things happen there. Middle linebacker, number 7, Montgomery, 5'11", 222. He is a senior, but he's a smaller guy. He has 126 snaps, 56 in rush defense, 16 in pass rush, so he doesn't blitz a ton. He's not their main blitzer guy, and 54 in coverage. He has 2 pressures, no sacks, 7 tackles, 3 assists, 4 stops so far. On coverage, he's allowed 4 receptions on 6 targets for 66.7% completion percentage. He has given up a touchdown. He does have 1 PBU, no interceptions. PFF grade is 55.5. That's below average. His rush defense grade is 52.8. That is well below average. His coverage is 61.7. That's just above average. And he has 4 missed tackles on the year. So out of the tackles he's made, that's a 28.6% missed tackle rate. That's pretty high. So again, you see where the rushing opportunity comes. You got guys who haven't graded out well. They're not all that big, and they miss a lot of tackles. The other middle linebacker they like to run, number 1, Sanogo, I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, 6'1", 232-pound senior. So, I mean, they got a lot of senior guys. They got a lot of upperclassmen in this defense. Out of 130 snaps, he's been 58 rush defense, 26 pass rush. So he does come up, he does come on a blitz a fair amount. 46 in coverage. So he's not the most common cover guy, but he has 8 pressures, 1 sack, 10 tackles, and 1 assist, which is pretty good. Those are pretty good numbers for only 2 games. 7 stops so far. Coverage, he's 3 of 4 on his completions and targets, which is a 75% reception rate allowed. No touchdowns allowed, no PBUs, and no interceptions. His PFF grade is 64.7. Rush defense is 64.2. So he's a good run defense linebacker, but his coverage is not that great at 58.4 grade. So, again, if you can get these linebackers, if you can get a nice matchup like Micah Pittman in the slot or Cam McDonald, you can make some things happen. Moving back to their secondary, their secondary is not bad. I don't want to act like they're bad, but they haven't really faced a legit passing attack quite yet. And they do have a hybrid guy there too, outside linebacker / safety, who's Ben Perry, 6'2", 200-pound redshirt freshman. He's played 85 snaps, 47 in rush defense, only 5 pass rushes, so he doesn't blitz a whole heck of a lot, and 33 in coverage. So far, no pressures, no sacks, 11 tackles on the season, 5 stops. He has a 4 receptions on 5 targets, which is an 80% reception rate against him. Not giving up a touchdown. He does have 1 PBU, no interceptions. Your PFF grade is 66.9. Rush defense is 59.9 again. Not good against the run, but his coverage grade is 71.1. So, he's pretty good in coverage, not so much against the run. The other safety, one of their other safeties that they like to run, Minkins, he's number 5, 6'2", 196-pound sophomore. So far, out of 147 snaps, he has 68 rush defense, 3 pass rush, 76 coverage. So this is your coverage safety. He has 9 tackles on the season, 4 stops. He's been pretty good in coverage. Now, he's only allowed 1 reception on 5 targets, which is only the 20% reception rate, not giving up a touchdown. He has 2 PBUs and no interceptions so far. So his PFF grade is 65.7. This is a trend we're seeing again, guys. Rush defense, 49.3. Terrible rush defense grade. His coverage grade is 75.5, which is well above average. 70 is usually like your quality starter type of grade. So this is a guy that, you may not want to throw against a whole lot. He does have 2 penalties so far in the year and 4 missed tackles, which when you look at the tackles that he has, that's a 30%, almost 31% missed tackle rate. So, there's opportunities there, but he's pretty good in coverage. The other safety that they run, Duncan, he's number 27, 6'3", 219 pounds, redshirt senior, so an older guy on the back end there. 130 snaps, 67 rush defense, only 2 pass rushes, 61 snaps in coverage. He has 13 tackles and 3 assists, which does lead the team. He has 4 stops. His coverage is also pretty well. He's allowed 1 reception on 3 targets for a 33.3% reception rate. Not allowed any touchdowns. He doesn't have any PBUs or interceptions, though. PFF grade 60.9, so just above average. Rush defense 58.4, below average. And his coverage 62.4 grade, which is barely above average. Again, 5 missed tackles, 23.8% missed tackle rate. So these guys, it's kind of like Miami from last year, where they just couldn't tackle anybody. It seems like they try and shoulder tackle a lot versus wrap up, which is probably a lot of the problem. Moving out to the corners, obviously everybody knows this name. Everybody knows the history. Jarvis Brownlee. It's funny. They said some people have posted on Twitter that he made a comment about when asked about this game that he had this game circled in the off season, and people have just been ripping him because okay, and I'm sure the receivers have had this game circled too because you've been kind of toast in the past, so I'm glad you circled it, but I don't know what for. If you could have circled a Jacksonville State receiver, you might still be in Tallahassee. But he doesn't exactly scare you, and it shows because he's been their most targeted DB so far of the whole secondary. Teams have went after him. Brownlee is number 12. He's 5'11", 179 pounds. He's played 75 of his 141 snaps in coverage, no pass rush, and 66 in run defense, which, credit to Brownlee. He does play with intensity. He does play emotional. He is a hard hitter. So if he catches you on a run play, he's going to pop you. But the thing is, he does get overly emotional sometimes, and sometimes that's to his detriment. You could see him getting emotionally out of control for this game and making some mistakes. And personally, I feel like Florida State should pick on him a little bit because he is their most susceptible corner. So far this season, he has 10 tackles, 2 assists, 3 stops. His coverage has been it's been okay. He's been targeted 15 times. He's allowed 10 receptions for a 66.7% reception rate. He has given up the most yards on the team at 120. He's not allowed a touchdown, but he does have their only interception on the team, and he does have 1 PBU as well. His PFF grade's been 61.1. Rush defense is 66.0, and coverage is 59.2, which is below average. So, to me, this is one, if you can get him in single coverage, get a stop and go or a post or something like that. If you can get Johnny Wilson on him, maybe Deuce Spann, a little bit bigger receiver where you get a size advantage and someone who can outrun him, I think you got to take some shots against him. You just do. And you got to take advantage of maybe him being a little too emotional. And Florida State knows his strengths, his weaknesses, because he was on their squad under the staff, so they know what he's good at and they know what he's not. And so I think they're going to take advantage of that too. And the thing is, Brownlee, most of Florida State starting receivers weren't there when he was there, so it's not like he's used to guarding these guys. He doesn't know their tendencies because most or all of them are transfers. So I think that works to your advantage. Their other cornerback, Clark, number 13, 5'10", 180-pound junior, 7 tackles, 2 stops on the season. He's a little better in coverage than Brownlee. He's allowed 5 receptions on 11 targets, 45.5% reception rate for only 42 yards. He has given up a touchdown, though. No PBUs, no INTs. PFF grade 56.9, below average, but his run defense is really what drags it down. 46.2 run defense grade. So find out whatever side he's on and run towards him because he's not good at rush defense. His coverage is 61.5% or 61.5 grade, So that's just slightly above average. Again, this secondary it's not like a no-fly zone. This is not something that you're overly scared of. I think this is going to be, like I said, the best receiver group they faced and one of the best quarterbacks they faced. So they'll be tested too. The last cornerback that they like that gets a majority of snaps is Riley, number 3, 6 foot, 184-pound junior. He has 3 tackles on the season, no defensive stops. He has allowed 2 receptions on 5 targets, 40% reception rate, only 20 yards, no touchdowns. He does have 2 PBUs and no interceptions. PFF grade 56.5, below average. Rush defense is better, 65.8, and his coverage is 57.9. So there's some opportunities in this secondary that if you can get some one-on-ones with these corners, like their safeties are pretty decent, but if you can get some one-on-ones with these guys, which Norvell is very good at scheming up, I think you create some opportunities. They're probably going to load the box, so you're going to have to run the ball a lot. But again, like I said, they have a lot of missed tackles. They over pursue a lot, so they create a lot of lanes, and I think you'll see some screens in this game. I think you'll see Jordan run the ball more often. So yeah, man, I mean, this defense is not lights out. They have a lot of upperclassmen, they have a lot of experienced guys, but for one reason or another, it just has not translated well to the field against offenses. I mean, the jury's still out on Syracuse. They could end up being a lot better team than we thought. So far they are, but they've not faced like some really dynamic offenses, and they've not really performed all that well. So it's something that you could see Florida State be able to take advantage of. As far as special teams go, obviously, Florida State has not done much in the run game, but they've done really well with their kick coverage. They've done well with blocking kicks so far. Louisville's field goal kickers is not much better or worse than what Florida State's position is in. One thing I will go over is the returns. So Louisville's allowed they have 6 returns so far for 126 yards, average of 21 yards per attempt. Florida State has 4 returns for 71 yards and 17.75 average return. No touchdowns by either team. So the return game is not something that may show up a whole lot, which is still a blunder for Florida State. Like, can we just make something happen on a return game? And there is an opportunity I'm going to talk about in 1 second. So kick return defense, UL's had 2 returns so far against them, 5 touchbacks. They're averaging giving up 12 yards per return. Florida State has 6 returns, 5 touchbacks, and averages 14.7 yards per return given up. So again, you're probably not going to see a whole lot in the return game. But one thing here I will say is, like, when you go over to punting, Louisville has had 4 returns so far with a 4-yard average return, no touchdowns. Not going to see much there. Florida State hasn't had anything either. 3 returns, 7 yards, 2.33 average yards per return, which is just it's not good. But when you flip over to the punt return defense, Louisville so far has had 5 returns for 48 yards. They're allowing 9.6 yards average return. And Florida State has 2 returns for negative 2 yards, like on their punt defense. So Florida State's giving up negative 1 yard punt return so far. So you have like about a 10-yard advantage there that could play out in field position. If you get Louisville to punt 4 or 5 times, then I mean that's 40, 50 yards of field position right there. So if Micah Pittman, who averaged about 10 yards a return at Oregon, and Louisville's given up about 10 yards per punt return, this might finally be the game that you could see something happen. I know Winston Wright's been practicing recently, mostly at return. I'm so encouraged to see him back because he's going to be an impact player for this offense if he can get back to 100%. I'm just not sure that this is the week that you see it. I still think Pittman will be the punt returner either way. If I see Winston Wright roll out a kickoff return, I might do a backflip in the living room. I literally can't do a backflip. I'd probably end up needing an ambulance, but mentally I'll do a backflip because he's an impact guy, and so that's something to watch. Again, like I said, on the punt return defense, it could be something because they do allow almost 10 yards return, and Micah Pittman is a guy that we thought would do a little better in return than we thought. So potentially it's there. Net punting, FSU is actually first in the country because they're averaging 48.67 net yards because they're not basically giving up any kind of returns. UL is 56 in the country at 40.29. They have a good punter, but they just give up a lot on returns. So that kind of ends the defensive and special teams preview. I know this is kind of already running a little bit long. You guys know my game previews tend to go really in depth, so I just want to give you guys the best picture I can. So I know it's running a little bit long, but we'll just wrap it up here with my game plan, my 3 keys, and then a score prediction. So obviously the game plan here is you got to contain Cunningham as best as possible. If the more you can contain him without blitzing, the better, because you can take these receivers away. If you can take away Tyler Hudson, then the other guys, they might get some things here and there, but they don't scare you. Tyler Hudson doesn't either, but he is their most heavily targeted guy, so you're going to have to focus on him and getting Cunningham on the ground. And the thing is, like Tatum Bethune, he played against them last year when he was at UCF, and so he knows the difficulty. He didn't have the greatest game in that one against Louisville, just like looking at his PFF grade and whatnot. But the thing is, like he commented this week that like he can't do anything if he's on the ground. And so you have to have guys like Jared Verse get into the backfield, which I think they'll be able to do, and just get him on the ground and take his rushing ability away. Make him beat you with his arm because he hasn't shown the ability to be a great passer this year with this receiving core. And so, again, it's the crazy thing is this is just like Louisville. The game plan is almost the same for Louisville as it was LSU, and the vice versa for them. Theirs is going to be make Jordan beat you with his arm. And I think Jordan now has shown the ability to do that with the pieces that we have. But you also look at, like this one, or LSU, you wanted to make Jayden Daniels beat you with your arm. He couldn't. He almost did, but he couldn't. Cunningham can. But, again, he's struggled this year, so he's had a hard time passing. So I definitely think that, again, you just got to try and contain him in the pocket. You can't let him get free. He hasn't ran a whole lot on you the last two games, the last two meetings, but he hasn't had to because you couldn't cover his receivers. They had guys running wide open. And Louisville is one of those games where this was one where you would see the defender or the receiver or the running back, I mean, literally the only thing in the TV's frame. There wouldn't even be a Florida State defender anywhere in the TV frame, which is terrible. I don't think this is that same type of defense anymore. I don't think they have the guys to do that anymore. I think Florida State's going to be a better defense this time around. You just hope they can limit some mistakes on the road. So I don't think it's going to be that way this time around. I think they're going to be able to take a lot of the passing game away. It's just how much can you limit his running ability? Because, again, guys, like I said, he might be struggling, but if he gets it together, if he plays like he can, and I think it's going to help him going back to the older game plan that they used to use where they let him run a little bit more to create some things. He's one of the most dynamic quarterbacks in the country. So he can beat you almost by himself. And I still am not going to say that Florida State can go in here and roll this team. Do I think they can win by 2 scores, possibly more? Yes, I do. I really do. But it's all going to come down to the game that Cunningham has and how well you can limit him. The next key that I have, which we talked about a little bit earlier, is limit the mistakes on the road. This is your first road game. I know, like I said, I know LSU was still, you had to travel, you had to stay in a hotel, but you had like 50-50 fans. It was neutral site and things like that. You had some extra time to get there. But again, you just got to limit the mistakes. You had an extra week to prepare, which was big. I think that should help Fuller a lot. You know, they were in a dogfight with UCF while you had an extra week to prepare. So you should know what to do in this game. And limiting mistakes, being out of place, penalties, stupid penalties, which we like to see a lot. You know, you get close to the sideline, and there's probably an FSU defender somewhere that's going to lay a late hit on you. So you got to clean that stuff up. You do that, you clean up the turnovers, the fumbles, and stuff like that. Let them play their sloppy game that they've played so far. Like I said, they had 12 penalties last game against Central Florida. They had a fair amount of turnovers. So if you can limit the mistakes and just let them be the team to make the mistakes, that's going to really work in your advantage. My last key to the game, and I literally typed it out like this, run, pick on Brownlee. So, and I mean, no offense to the guy, but we've seen him. Like, we have seen him and his lack of coverage ability. And the funny thing is, like we talked about earlier when they said he had circled this game, all the Louisville fans are coming out like, oh, yeah, let's just contain him and let Brownlee work. Work on what? Giving up another Hail Mary, not tackling somebody. Like, we watched his games too, guys. So, I mean, Louisville fans, like, I don't know who you think you got there. And he might have a good game. Who knows? I mean, he might. He might have a breakout game against us. But, yeah, man, I wouldn't be hanging my hat on that quite yet. So, again, like I said, run, because they've given up 208 yards rushing in both of their first games. I actually thought it was a glitch when I looked the stat up. I'm like, wow, 208. Did that not refresh? No, 208 yards, exact same amount in both games. So, Florida State is probably a better rushing team than Central Florida, probably about as good. Maybe not quite as good as Syracuse because that is their game, is the ground game. but you should be able to get close to 200 yards, which is also Florida State's kind of season average. In the past, they are usually put up around 200 yards a game, so that's something you definitely want to see, and just establish that ground game against this undersized D line, and then let the pass open up because if you can, like I said, if you can get in the one-on-ones with Brownlee and you can get some shots downfield, they're going to have to respect that pass. And again, these are the biggest, most talented receivers that they've had to face so far. And if you can get a couple of shots off on them, they're not going to be able to load the box, and then you'll create some running opportunities. They do like to blitz, so you may see him have to move the pocket a little bit. You may have to see Jordan take off a few more times. I think you're going to see him scramble. Well, not scramble, but I think you're going to see him run a little bit more this game than you have in the past just because of things like that. But again, if you can establish a run game, if you can put up 200 yards on the ground and you can get, Jordan's he's a pretty efficient passer. He usually averages, when he's throwing the ball and he plays a full game, between 200 and 250 yards. If you can get 200 on the ground and you can get 240, 260 through the air, I think that's enough to win. Like I said, a lot of this is really going to come down to your defense because their defense is not great. So I think you're going to be able to score on them. Obviously, Syracuse put up 31. Central Florida didn't put up a whole lot. So I think if Florida State can get to 30, I think that's a win for them. I think they will get to 30. My actual score prediction has Florida State scoring 31. So yeah, I mean, like I said, if you can get to 30 points, and I think it's very possible, it's all going to come down to your defense because, like we said earlier, if you hold them to 21 points or less, they've won 1 out of 10 times. So if you could get this game to say 31-21, that's money in the bank. So it's just gonna really count. What your defense can do limiting Cunningham. He's back at home. It's game 3. I'm sure they got some things probably figured out. Knowing our luck, like we said, he'll probably have the best game that he's had all season or will have all season against us. But, I mean, hopefully not. Maybe they at least try to make him a pocket passer for one more game. So at the end of the day, guys, the opportunity is there. It's like I said with all my other predictions. This is assuming Florida State is going to come out ready to play, bring some intensity, and get better each week. And if they can do that, we're still looming on the LSU performance. We still need to see that kind of performance with less mistakes where, like we said, Florida State should have won that game at least 34-17. If you can see the type of game Florida State played for the first 3.5 quarters, they could win this game by multiple scores. If you see them kind of play like they did the last half of a quarter against LSU, Louisville can beat you. So I'm not really predicting this to just be like an 80-20 win. I still think this game is about 60-40 FSU. I just think that you're the more talented team, you're better coached, and Jordan has really shown some ability this year. And if he can outplay Cunningham, I feel good about the game. So at the end of the day, give me Florida State. I'm going to go 31-27 FSU to win. I hope they can, maybe be 34-24, something like that. That would be ideal. But this would be a great win for Florida State. You go on the road, you get your first true road test. It might even get you ranked. You feel good about being 3-0 rolling into a Boston College team that you should beat. That should be 4-0. And then you got Wake Forest, which could be your first ranked matchup coming in the week after that. So this is a big win for this program if they can get it. If you lose, I mean, it doesn't really derail your season, but I think it kills a lot of momentum from the LSU game. I think a lot of people, including inside the Florida State circles, right now we're just like, you feel really good about what you have and what you've seen, but it's such a small sample size that you just need to see like another game or two where they play like they can, they get better every week, and they win these types of games. Like if you can go out and back the LSU game up with a win against Louisville, say like 34-24 on the road, then you come home and you handle Boston College, which I think they'll do, something like 38-17 or something like that, man, you feel really good about this team moving forward. If they go lay an egg against Louisville, like I said, it's not going to derail your season, but it's gonna shoot a lot of momentum right in the foot, and that's something that you really don't want to have happen because I feel like Florida State is the better team and they should win this game. So that's where I'm at with it. I think they should win. I think they will win. You just hope they can get better this week and use the extra week of preparation to their advantage. And that's the thing. The schedule kind of does or has set up well for some of the things Florida State has. I like that they got the bye week to get some rest because they were kind of beat up. But this is a very winnable game for Florida State. But this is also a game that if you mess around, you'll get beat. And again, Satterfield has had a good track record against them, and I think they're in desperation mode a little bit too. But you could really see where Florida State can jump on them quick. That it could be very one-sided. So again, with that, like I said, give me the Noles in this one. I'm picking us to win. Like I said, I felt better. I picked us to win in the preseason. I feel even better about that now. But we still haven't seen FSU play a true road game, and that's going to happen Friday night. So. Thanks, guys, for listening. I know this one ran a little bit long. I'm trying to make them short, but by the time I get everything out that I feel like you guys would want to know, it runs long. So I apologize for that. If you listen to the whole thing, thanks for sticking around. Hopefully this helps you get ready for the game this weekend or Friday. Golly, we got to get back to Saturday games. So I appreciate you guys listening. Appreciate all the support. Go connect with us on social media. Like I said, I try and reply to almost every comment there. I try to really interact with everybody, so I'd love to hear from you guys. And so with that, we'll see you guys on the other side of this game. I do work weekends. I'm a first responder outside of this, so we don't get weekends off, we don't get holidays off, we don't get any of that off. So I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to do an instant reaction for this one. It may have to come Saturday morning or even Sunday, depending on how much of the game. I work nights too, so I'll be at work during the game. I'm going to try and watch it as best I can, or at least keep up with it. So that may be something that has to come a little bit later, but I'm going to get out what I can for you guys. So again, thanks for sticking around. Thanks for the support. We'll see you on the other side. Thanks for listening, and go Noles.